There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call
the Kaalia Zone.
You folks out there in Magic Land are going to hear something a little more differently than you did the last time that we were together. Number one, my audio is probably infinitely more clear, and you can hear the subtle tones of my voice and all of that stuff. And with me today from, we were talking like 15 months ago, October of 2020, is my friend and yours, the Three Drinks. Say hello, buddy.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's been a hell of a long time since I've been here on this, whether you want to call it podcast, video.
Yep.
What's been up? What have you been up to in the last year or so?
Wow, let's see, man. So, was it last year? Yeah. So last year, myself and a few other people hosted the very first CDH World Championship. It was broadcast on Twitch. It was called the Mean 16, that kind of stuff, and that kind of. There had been other like CDH tournaments, but none really trying to get the best of the best together, an invitational only kind of thing. Let's see. Oh, I became a rules committee member.
Wait, of the Commander.net rules committee, or?
So nothing that big. So there's a little thing called Pauper Commander. It's actually been around for a long, long time. You probably remember a lot of that stuff from the MTG Salvation forums, like 2011, 2012. There was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely remember a lot of that from Salvation back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried brewing into that, and I love the format. I hate that it's so hard to get people to dive into that locally.
Yeah,
because everyone wants to play their Soul Rings and their Smothering Tides and their Demonic Tutors, and it's hard for them to want to give that kind of stuff up.
So we've been having some moderate success with that lately because of the fact that card prices are so astronomical. So a Pauper option is, kind of nice these days. So kind of continuing down that line, because I could talk about this all day. I've been talking about it for the last 10 months, so I can do it all day. Basically, so unlike regular EDH, Pauper Commander recognizes that there is a casual side and a competitive side, and we are all working together to try to develop the format and make it pleasurable for everyone. So I produce a lot of content related to that. I do a lot of peripheral stuff to that, and yeah, it's been a ride. How about yourself?
Well, so I kind of slipped back a little bit from doing so much Magic, between the pandemic making it to where you can't really play cards, and the fact that I don't have a great setup for virtual Magic, as you saw in the one game I think we had online. That was a nightmare. Between the product fatigue from Wizards saying, hey, here's a new set, hey, here's a new set, hey, here's a new set, and it's like, whoa, calm your tits. I'm still trying to digest the first set that you guys showed me. But I went from, go to work, come home. I started developing a difficulty patch for an old Nintendo 64 game. Like I've got the ROM for it. I'll sometimes stream it here and there. It's an old game called Ogre Battle 64.
Interesting.
Oh God, at least 2 decades now, and I have seen all the different endings on it, and I understand it mechanically, but there's just something that always drew me back to the game.
That's pretty cool.
And thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's this basically a strategy RPG, kind of like any other JRPG, that weighs layered choices into the decision trees that you wind up doing throughout the game. From there, I started getting into the Nintendo DS and like some of the Pokemon games, not the cards. I only play one card game, but I started to learn some of this future generation stuff that I missed out on from back in the day. And like everything in life being a circle, I come all the way back around to Magic. Some Kaalia stuff, because that's what I'm fairly known for. I do taxi things because there's no card type that's sacred in Magic. So that could be Alesha, that could be my Karizev, because of all my sick altars I've had done. Weird, goofy concepts like playing with white border, which, by the way, in this era, with all the power creep, I don't recommend the white border stuff. It is not aged very well by all the power creep.
Interesting. Well, without further ado, do you want to proceed down the road, my man? So, what we were talking about previously is before we came on, we were like, hey, it's been a while since we recorded these things. What kind of new stuff has cropped up in the last year or so, right? So, I don't know if you have a list. I have a little bit of a list because I'm obnoxiously organized. So
yeah, you're definitely the more organized one of me.
Yep.
Of you and I.
So basically, I have a couple of categories of Windows groups, browser window groups. So I have lands, I have creatures, I have instants and sorceries. I've got enchantments, artifacts. Just basically a small collection of stuff over the last year. And what's going to happen is, as we talk about these cards, you'll see them pop up onto your screen. I'll do that in post-production. And that way you can follow along with what the hell we're talking about. So, because Drinks hit on something very particular, because we've been inundated with so much product. I might not know the popular name for things, like, for example, the battle bond lands, whatever they were called, or the triomes, like they called them tricycles, whatever popular vernacular. So if I don't say the thing that they're known for, I apologize. I'll try to explain what I'm talking about. Because some of these cards I use all the time in various ways. I just, I've kind of disengaged, just like Drinks, just many people disengage from the constant spoiling, of cards. So I'm just trying to soak up the things that I want to soak up, and then that sort of thing. Anyway, anything further before we talk about cards that have been released for Our Lady, or in Our Lady's colors? Anything?
So, it's funny you mentioned those battle bond lands, those things, the pathway lands, and I still to this day haven't acquired those. I haven't played them. don't even care. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
they don't. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a land without types that usually comes in untapped. Okay, but like that means that they're only as good as at fixing as you can draw them. And I've gone so hard onto the fetch phase that
Yep.
you know, like what is that? I think Luxury Suite is one of the lands.
Yep.
I would just as soon play. Where is it? I'm looking at my list right now. Like I would just as soon play a Canyon Slough before I played that. I would play.
So yeah, we're gonna definitely have some things to talk about, because see, what's interesting enough is like when we first did this podcast, I was actually like whole hog CDH Kaalia, screw budget shit. You know, like I am in. You're playing Mox Diamond, or you fucking go home, right? So what's changed in that time is, I guess, is probably my proximity to Pauper Commander. Like I still think about CDH. Like I still got my Mox Diamonds. I still got, Gilded Drakes, all of these things I still play with. But I've also considered like the range of stuff, because I guess the big thing I recognized in that time is that I'm not a monolith myself. And then also the thing that we did so many months ago is we were talking about this thing that we loved near and dear to our hearts, but the one thing that I think we failed on is we didn't talk about the spectrum of, we didn't do the representation thing. We didn't talk to those people that like to play Kaalia in a jank fashion, because we don't do that, right? But that doesn't mean they don't exist, and it doesn't mean that as long as people aren't like rubbing her on the bare concrete, that kind of thing, people can play Kaalia to their heart's content any way they want to, and I'll support it because I'm down for my lady,
100%. It's funny because everyone is all about that Kaalia of the past, it's impressive because you get to play a sneak attack commander, and I know that's super exciting. And while everyone did that, and while the main Kaalia Discord server keeps booming and growing, I've been like the one that sat back and actually done the other Kaalia, the Zenith Seeker, that another YouTube channel tried to show, and they did it very poorly because they're like, "Oh, well, that's Kaalia, so let's just put her in the actual Kaalia deck, and it'll be good." And it's like, no, it's not. There's actually a lot of math, which is probably what drew me to this particular deck.
Spoiler alert, we will be talking about that a little bit later in the program, either in this episode or following episodes, so stay tuned. So with that, because I don't want you to tip your hand too much on Zenith Seeker, you want to jump into some lands? I'm gonna talk about some lands. So I'll do the job of like prefacing some stuff. Once again, as you mentioned card names, I'll do post-production, bring them up on the screen so everybody else knows what we're talking about, that kind of stuff. We'll just talk about lands for a little bit, So these are lands in the last year, 15 months that have come out since the last time that so good is a relative term, right? That are good in certain circumstances, under certain conditions, right? So whether that be budgetary, whether that be, whatever, right?
Right. Like as far as new lands go, we actually go as recent as Kaldheim to uncover some more lands. And by those, I'm looking at Sulphurous Mire.
I got it right at, I'm looking right at that right now. That was my first one that I was going to queue up. So
Sulphurous Mire, Alpine Meadow, and then where'd that other one go? Right.
Okay, so these are important.
Sinkhole, that's the other one.
So these are important. Why?
Well, the main thing that you want with them is that they have land types. And for someone like me that plays the full 11 fetch lands, that's the 9 from Zendikar and Onslaught, because you can't play Misty Rainforest, Prismatic Vista, and the newest fetch land, which is a great example of how bad a fetch has to be and still be playable in Fabled Passage.
Righteous. So the Kaldheim lands, dual land type, like named specific land type on a dual land, and the only thing wrong with it, and it's even snow, right? The only thing wrong with it, air quotes, is that it comes into play tapped. So for those Kaalia fans who are budget minded, can't afford the duels, or like we've met people in our travels, I'm sure you have too, Drinks, that eschew the ways of the rich and famous and only build budget decks, right? So for those people, this is a great choice.
And even if you're not on a budget, like I play my snowlands alongside my Avid duels. But I take care that, like, the lands that I play, very few are going to come in tapped. Like, my mana base looks very boring because all it does is just fix my colors. There's like Strip Mine, a Wasteland, and an Ancient Tomb, and everything else just color fixes for me. So I can play Snow Duels that come in tapped. I can play Bicycles like Canyon Slough. I can play a Tango land like a Smoldering Marsh, because it takes 2 to tango.
Righteous. So you're definitely not considering any of the Sulphurous Mires or anything like that.
No, I play Sulphurous Mire as well. Like I play my Snow Duels right alongside.
Righteous. Well, that's good news.
I guess the only land that it doesn't have a type, but it still fixes all your colors, and I don't see enough people playing it, despite it having like a $2 price tag after like 100 prints, is Path of Ancestry. Because it doesn't look like it's a Kaalia card, because Kaalia is a human cleric and everything you're playing is angels, demons, and dragons.
Yep.
But it turns out that we want to play our commander in the first place. And having lands that make every color is great. Now, having a land that makes every color and then just adds a free scry 1 whenever you cast your commander, it's just like, it's gravy. Like, more people should play that land, because that
absolutely
is a lot better than they give it credit for. I know that we don't like tap lands, and if we wanted to play a tap land that was always tapped unconditionally and was just vanilla, but it just fixed all your colors, like there's always like a Nomad Outpost. But as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to play that when you have something like Path of Ancestry, because it's literally strictly better. It's the same exact card, virtually the same text, but it has more. And especially in my case, because I play Zenith Seeker, so I'm recasting my commander a lot, those scries add up. But even just in Kaalia, just getting a free scry, it could be the difference between finding the key threat or tutor or whatever you need and not.
So I'm going to blow your mind, right? So there's this land card called Study Hall. Heard of it?
Study Hall. That sounds like it might have came out of Lorehold.
Commanders.
That's the name of the guild, wasn't it?
Yeah. Commander 2021. It was probably the Strixhaven edition. So it is an Opal Palace, but instead of putting counters it scries for every time you cast your commander. Now, depending on the build, right, there are some builds that are trying to stick a Kaalia the Vast and protect Kaalia the Vast at all cost, that sort of thing. There are other builds of Kaalia the Vast that ramp hard enough that they sacrifice a little bit of the protection to be able to ramp and maintain tempo and momentum in the game. So for those types of decks that anticipate, well, either that or they're in a meta, their own personal meta is really harsh towards their commander and they're going to be recasting, a couple, 3, 4 times. Study Hall, pay 1 into Study Hall, tap it, and you cast, for every time you cast your commander from the command zone, you get to scry that many. So it's a little something we play in PDH. So I thought it would be like somewhat of a hidden gem, like for those people. It's going to be niche. Sure, it's going to be niche for certain people in certain metas, that kind of stuff. But I think you and I can agree, even though the card draw has gotten better, one thing Kaalia has always wanted is some, redundancy in card selection and that sort of thing.
So I just pulled up that card and I kind of like it. What I don't like on it versus the Path of Ancestry is that Path of Ancestry works on ETB and it doesn't care about your commander specifically. It just cares about any creature that shares a type. Commander.
So you get humans or clerics or
the Dast. I mean, most of the time that's not gonna be relevant. And like the other Kaalia, that's a big difference. There's a lot of things that actually also happen to be a cleric, for example. Or, so.
Yep, Grand Abolisher.
Maybe I shouldn't say big difference. I mean, it's not huge or anything. It's not game changing by any means. But yeah, it's a difference maker. The other thing is that Study Hall is just a colorless land. So to actively use it, it's a Forbidden Grotto. You're actually going down a mana on it. Whereas Path of Ancestry has no cost other than just the turn where it comes in tapped.
Yeah. So like the difference being is the scalability of it. So Path of Ancestry, if your deck can support clerics, humans, other than Kaalia herself, then you're going to get more payoff in the 99 from that card. However, if you're heavily dependent on casting and end up recasting and, etc., Kaalia from the command zone to get those tasty demons, dragons, and angels out, then potentially I thought this would be a good option. But, I mean, like I said, it's not going to be, everybody's taste is going to be a little different.
So that's telling me if you have a commander that has some kind of ETB effect, that's where you're really going to want to study. Anything that, even if you don't have to keep jamming it because it keeps dying, just something that you want to keep playing it to keep getting the quote unquote value. No, not even that, because number of times it's been cast from the command zone this game.
Yep.
So you couldn't just put it into the graveyard or into your hand. Yep. You're going to have to pay up the commander tax.
Yep.
And you're going to go down a mana to use it. Yeah.
So Drinks doesn't like Study Hall.
They were really cautious when they made this card.
They were. It's an Opal Palace, but scry. That's all it is. So yeah, Opal Palace is dangerous because, as you well know, putting counters onto a creature doesn't survive removal. Yeah, Animar is different because it wants counters, but putting counters onto a creature under normal circumstances is a difficult proposal because they don't stick around past death.
Yes.
So
I do like this card more than Opal Palace, for sure. But man, they really make it hard for someone like me to break this card.
Yeah. Okay, so the next ones, you actually said the name earlier in the intro, the Pathways. What's Three Drinks hot takes on Pathways?
I think that unless you're trying to bounce the lands so that you can replay them, because like they're single color lands on each side, right?
Right.
So yeah, they come in untapped, but there's just going to be one color. So at that point, they're a basic that that gets wastelanded, and you can't even fetch them or anything. So it's like.
Well, let's be honest. Most people aren't wastelanding lands. Only you, me, and a few other people.
I mean, that's fair.
Right. So my thing when I look at the Pathways. So right now I'm looking at Needle Verge Pathway. It's the red white one. If you're playing a tempo version of Kaalia where you're trying to outpace the table and you're probably forced with some sort of budget restriction or what have you, and you can't afford any of the other duels, this presents a great option to fix your mana within like the first couple of turns.
Like it gives you that flexibility up front, but as the longer the game goes, it really hurts you, because that could have been, for example, a Nomad Outpost, but instead you're just stuck on that one, for example, red land with that double white card in your hand.
Right, and that's exactly what I was talking about with the like a tempo-based version, because like these are strictly meant for when you need that color, like now, like right now. Like I need to choose what am I deficient in? Boom, I'm deficient in white. I'm gonna flip the sucker over. I'm gonna get my white. I'm gonna get to casting Kaalia, and boom, I'm entering into a race. So where the tap land, so what your point is where the tap land is concerned, yes, it puts you off a turn, but moving forward, you have access to everything. So there's merit to both.
I guess that means that you'd want the Pathways if you're in like a combo shell that wants to get the mana so it can start going.
Yep.
If you can't afford, for example, to
yes.
pass.
Yes. See, now you're starting to put your thumb on. So you being the stacks player, the control player, you want the end game to be strong, not the front game. The front game is just assembling the pieces. So this is a very front end heavy type of card. So, okay.
Why I never really got excited to pick those up.
Right. So Pathways. Big thumbs down. Put it on the screen. No, seriously, at $3-4 a pop, legitimately, if you can trade up or value up or whatever it is that you can do to get your hands at least on some shock duels, But even then, once you get your shock duels and get those filled out, then you get your pain lands and all of these other color fixing lands. Sometimes you might have to run a pathway in a slot, just to round that out.
Hot take. Just getting your shock lands, if you don't have any fetches, those shocks don't mean anything to you. They're actually worse check lands. Honestly. Because the advantage of having a shock is being able to fetch into it and make the exact colors that you need. And if you don't have a fetch, you're just playing, that Blood Crypt is just a really bad Dragon Skull summon. I don't see that as a slight, because I like the trick lands. I think the trick lands are really good. They're like a really good kind of a standard bearer type of level as far as your duels go.
So for those of you who don't know the terminology, the check land is the one it checks to see if you have met the prerequisite for it to come into play untapped. So it looks to see when it ATBs whether or not it has another swamp or another, or not another, but a swamp or a mountain or a plains in play to come into play untapped. What's the name of one of those?
In Kaalia's case, it would be Clifftop Retreat,
Yep.
Dragon's Gold Summit, or Isolated Chapel.
Okay. Yeah, so they'll check the conditions of the battlefield to see whether or not they come into play tapped or untapped. So check lands. Okay. Okay, so moving away from the pathways. So it's good that you actually brought up check lands, because I don't know what they're called, but they came out in Innistrad, and they're kind of a check land. But they're checking a different, so it's not like a buddy land, or is it a buddy land? So Suntown.
Talking about those reveal lands.
No, this is Sundown Pass. So it says Sundown Pass enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. So where you had the fast lands of like old, yeah. So these would be slow lands.
So I don't play those either. Like in Modern, I play the Hall of Storm Giants in my Yorion control, just because that's a pretty resilient clock,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got that same clause. But I don't like. So why? You know, like these things are good.
Oh, so that's
Turn 3, the opposite of Black Clay Cliffs.
But see, that's the thing, right? So looking at this in perspective, okay. So it's not so much about what I would play or what Three Drinks would play, right? We have our deck lists. They're posted out on the internet. Thousands of people have seen them, that kind of stuff. So I guess we could, for you, I would actually say that this might not be a bad choice because it is a later game kind of thing. Although the problem with that is if you play more than one, you might end up having to sandbag it, hold it in your hand until you have met the requirements to play the slow land, right? But also, like, these are like $4. Right? What's a look up right now that this is February of 2022. What is the price of a Blood Crypt? Let's see.
So Blood Crypt all around is ranging from a very average $15, with the Dissension print at $45, mm-hmm. Original print, and the Expedition Blood Crypt at $187.
Okay, so none of us are buying. Well, I'm not buying the Expeditions, but like comparative, let's say low end, right? $15 for a Blood Crypt. Like you said earlier, playing fetch lands, absolutely. They're force multiplier for fetches and fetches for shock duels, right? So these lands, these slower lands, by comparison, don't interact with fetches. You probably don't want to play all 3 of them because, in fact, you probably don't want to play all 3 of these plus all 3 of the fast lands, because now you're like, every turn you're like, okay, do I have enough? All right, I've got too many. You know, you're going to be, having whiplash from checking your board state all the time. So as a onesie twosie, trying to round out your mana base for like a mere like $4 a pop, definitely, consider one of these. Or, like that's the thing. How would you, what was the cards we just looked at? The flippy ones, the dual-sided mobile ones. Pathways. I would definitely think that you would think these are better than the Pathways.
Yeah. I kept thinking about it as you were talking about that, and if I was in a situation where I didn't have my fixed lands, so I really didn't care about the shocks and everything else, I would think I really would enjoy these in conjunction with something like thawing glaciers.
Yeah.
Because that glaciers is going to be that early land, for those first few turns, and then thanks to glaciers, it's going to enable these slow lands to start coming in untapped.
See, there you go. Boom. Because that's the thing. We do have, and I am humbled by it. If you are out there in our viewership and you are one of our budget-friendly players who likes to consider like $5 lands and stuff like that, hopefully this time around. Last time we were like, yeah, play the OG duels or the shock duels and fetch lands or you ain't shit. That. We've grown up a little bit.
A little bit. I mean, we're still slamming big giant angels, demons, and dragons.
Correct.
So how much could we really have grown up?
You're right. As grown up as two knuckleheads can get. Okay, cool. So that is the slow lands from the last little bit. The last one that I have for the lands section, unless you have more, is a non-basic, obviously, Urza's Saga.
Oh man! So there's a lot of things to unpack there in that card.
Yep.
Especially for someone like me that's got into Modern and sees that thing in every single round.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the first thing is that there's an obvious deck building cost because you have a colorless land, but not just that, it's like a gemstone mine because you're only going to have it for a couple of turns.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you're not really going to use that for mana, right? Because you're gonna play it that first turn, get your mana, and then those next two turns, you're going to be using it to make a construct, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not going to use that mode on the card, there's no reason to put the card in there because you're not using it to its fullest. You're better off with any other land. I mean, hell, for a colorless mana, you could just play a waste.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get to that capstone ability. Search your library for an artifact with mana value 1 or less and put that card on the battlefield. Now, if you're like me and you play Modern, you know that typically means get target Shadow Spear and make target Burn player lose the game. Speaking also as a Burn player, screw you. I hate that card. But, as the toolboxy kind of control player I can also be, the fact that I can go and get like a Zurin Orb, for example, and sack lands to gain some life and to help stabilize, or just sticking in Mardu, I grab me a Zurin Orb, sack a land that you're trying to wasteland or something, and oh look, I got my land count down. Now guess what I can do? I can use Tide. I can use
land tax. Yeah.
I can use Knight of the White Orchid. I can use Archaeomancer's Map. There's a lot of things you can do with it. And think about over the years, the number of powerful artifacts with mana value 1 or less that are really good silver bullets that stop people. Like Tormod's Crypt can be played by any deck. Every deck needs more graveyard hate.
Mm-hmm.
Probably in Commander, one of the most ubiquitous things your Urza Saga will get is an expedition map. An expedition map, you're going to get all sorts of lands. Hell, you can get Scavenger Grounds, and I freaking love that land.
Yep.
It's not actually in my deck here on screen, but I love that thing. I love that it shuts down other people's reanimation. I hate that it shuts down my own, but man, that thing just even without cracking it, just leaving it in 2 mana untapped to like watch people's reanimates and animate deads just suddenly fall like a limp noodle. It's such a great rival.
Yeah. So for me, like the fact that you're able to tap it for mana the turn that it comes in, it doesn't have a ETB tapped or otherwise tapped ability. It's colorless, yes, but experienced deck builders can work around that. So the second ability, creating a creature from the perspective of Kaalia, you just made my diabolic intent better. Period. Because I can now create a creature that I can sack to tutor. So now we start to increase the efficacy of all of the, not the direct tutors, but the conditional tutors, right? So you're doing that. And then after I go fetch whatever it is I'm going to fetch, I can either, I can't think of a 0-drop or 1-drop artifact that would tie up into some sort of combo for Kaalia specifically. That's another deck, but that last ability, I'm either getting a Mana Crypt or Soul Ring, or
Well, if you're looking for a 1 mana value artifact that's going to help you combo off, the first thing that comes to my mind is Lion's Eye Diamond.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And speaking of that first ability with the colorless mana, because I've run this card in this Kaalia deck here, that mana then filters into my Arcune's Astrolabe, which I could talk for days on that card.
Mm-hmm.
More people should be playing it. It's a free card, essentially. Fixes your colors perfectly, replaces itself. Like, it would allow you to use that saga and make it color mana snowman, even if that's relevant to you.
Yeah. So you're exactly right, and I don't know why it flipped right over my head. So like Urza's Saga, while slow because it's timing, right? So each turn you get a thing, makes your diabolic intent better, or at a minimum. Fetches up that Lion's Eye Diamond that you can play with that Underworld Breach that you just fetched up with your diabolic intent, and then you've got 2/3 of the combo right there. From a value standpoint, like what are some? I wish I would have thought about this earlier. You'd already mentioned a few value 1-drops. I'm trying to think of something that doesn't actually hate on us, like Grafdigger's Cage is a no-gooder. Let's see.
Honestly, I like the capsule cycle from Shards of Alara, Executioner's Capsule.
Yeah.
There's nothing to write home about. The same spell bombs.
Yeah.
They can just help them.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be able to grab those with this because it would have to be specifically colorless 1.
Wait, Saga actually says colorless?
Yep. Mana cost 0, or 1 colorless. So it would have to be something like a Grafdigger's Cage or LED or
Nile Spellbomb.
Yep.
Nile Spellbomb, Pyrite Spellbomb, Lotus Bloom.
There you go.
Lotus Bloom mana value it has no mana value, which is treated as 0. It is colorless.
Wow. That was a nice little section on lands. Hey, thanks everybody for listening. We're going to do other types in future episodes. Each episode will be approximately 2 to 3 weeks apart. So be on the lookout for more bangers just like this one.